Okay, so we're going to move on to another section of our program, a little bit of a treat. I'm going to introduce now the first in a trio of speakers that we call local heroes. These are just simply inspiring people. They represent, the visionary innovators who we've met, some of whom we've met in Africa and elsewhere, of course, throughout our travels as we went through this GIO process. We thought you'd enjoy hearing their stories, but more importantly, understanding how they did business in Africa from a very first-hand perspective. And the first we're going to hear from this morning is a gentleman by the name of Gbenga Odujinrin. He is the Group Managing Director and CEO of Telnet Nigeria Limited. Now, Telnet was established in 1985. It is a leading provider of solutions and services in the information technology and communications industry sector. Gbenga rose to his current role as Telnet CEO and Group Managing Director in Nigeria after a number of executive positions, but having begun his career as a design engineer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Gbenga.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Oh, so thank you, Nick. All right. First off, say thank you for IBM for giving me the opportunity to come and address this honorable and big crowd. They've done a lot of things to try to make me feel Africa. I've got this little tropical forest on my table yesterday. We had a great meal, Nigerian, Sudanese, but they've done nothing about the weather in New York. It's pretty cool, please. If you can do something. Okay, right. For us, for our story, it started about 20 years ago. We started as a company trying to provide solutions like all IT companies in Africa and in an emerging world. But over the years, we've moved on to becoming a company that provides transformational solutions. And that has helped change a lot of perspective about what is possible in Africa. We did have our challenges, and we did have our challenges. I remember in the 90s, one of the things we thought about was the burgeoning internet world. It's important to connect the countries in Nigeria and enterprises to the internet. We ended up building a visa hub. 2 years after, a retrospective law came in by the government, forcing us or compelling us to sell it to the local or single operator. That is Africa in the 90s. 5 years later, we were being asked by the same government to buy up the operator. But that is the changing faces of Africa. The government do make such pronouncements and such things, not because they really want to hurt business, but they think it's the best thing to protect the natural resources and the abundant resources of Africa. Mistakes have been made in the past, but governments are going through reforms in Africa, trying to change the way things are done. Actually, one of my people, the earlier speakers, talked about so many governments going through reforms in Africa, and this is changing things in Africa. For us in Nigeria and the rest of Africa, these are exciting times to be in Africa. It's affecting everything we do. It's building up confidence in the business. And we are seeing places where government now have engagement directly with the private sector to try and make things happen. Because the government now sees that the only way to sustaining democracy is creating wealth for everybody. And that it's important in Africa. And the governments are also happy to be able to earn more taxes. We have a huge informal sector in Africa, and that is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. We are one of the companies that provided a solution in Nigeria that has helped increase in the last 5 years the uptake or the payment of value-added tax to over 50% every year in increase. Now it's being targeted that in the next 7 years, the Nigerian government will earn enough from taxes more than what they will earn from oil. Those are the realities of what is possible in Africa. But for an investor coming to Africa, you will have to appreciate that Africa will not be like the West. We have our challenges. We have things that make it difficult for you to do business. But if you also flip the coin over, they represent opportunities for doing business. And those are some of the things the South African investors have come to realize, and they've taken a lot of benefits from this. With a country, 54 countries in Africa, 930 million people by latest statistics, the reality is that for consumer business and what you can do in Africa, Africa is going to be the next 1 billion people market in the world. Next to China, next to India, it's going to be Africa. The statistics show us that points us to this fact. Nearly close to 6.8% growth in economy across Africa, and that's not including countries like Angola, Equatorial Guinea that are going over 10% per annum.